Business has always been about turning a profit, making money. But can it stand for something more? Something beyond dollars and cents? We think so. We think that today, business has a higher calling, a purpose to be fair and just, to do right by their workers, customers, communities, and the environment. And it turns out companies successful doing that also do better for their bottom line. When you see the Just Capital seal, it means this company is a force for good. Visit justcapital.com to learn more.
Good afternoon, and we're doing it live now in the 4 o'clock hour here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC at our new time. We are doing more in 2024, now at 4 in the afternoon. Mottek On Money 5 days a week for you, live on the air right here on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast at kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms, and on the socials too at Frank Mottek on X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram. Well, stocks ended mostly lower today. Investors rethinking the chances of an interest rate hike by the Fed now, and we're expecting new inflation readings later this week. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 158 points. The S&P 500 down 7. The Nasdaq managed a closing gain of 14 points. Stocks closed mostly lower today after a jump on Monday. The market now pricing in about a 59% chance that the Fed will start lowering interest rates at its March policy setting meeting. We already heard this week from the Fed Governor Michelle Baumann, who said inflation could retreat without further rate hikes, but the economy was not at a point yet where the rate cuts, that is, were needed. We got drama going on at the Securities and Exchange Commission today. Did you see this? The SEC's official account on X, formerly known as Twitter, apparently was compromised today and published an unauthorized post that the SEC had approved the launch of exchange-traded funds investing directly in Bitcoin. Well, in fact, the agency has not approved any spot Bitcoin ETFs. I repeat, has not approved any spot Bitcoin ETFs. And the earlier post on X, which has now been deleted, was sent by an unauthorized user, according to the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Gary Gensler. Never seen anything like this. So we're going to be following this. We did see a Bitcoin price get a bump on this news, but now it's hovering at around, let's see here, 46,204, up about 600. Crypto market participants have widely expected the SEC to approve a spot Bitcoin ETF soon, and the agency, we're told, has until January 10th to make a decision on the Bitcoin ETF application filed by ARK Investment and 21 Shares. So following this breaking news here, Boeing making news today with the company's chief executive, David Calhoun, telling employees the jet maker needed to acknowledge its mistakes after a panel blew off a 737 MAX 9 jet flown by Alaska Airlines over the weekend. He says they should approach the matter with complete transparency. He says, we're going to approach this, number one, acknowledging our mistake. The head of Boeing telling employees at a meeting at a 737 factory in Washington State, we're going to approach it with 100% and complete transparency every step of the way. The remarks in the meeting were first reported today by the Wall Street Journal. We see Boeing stock down more than $3 today at $225 and change. Well, another eye-popping reading recently on the national debt, another federal budget drama playing out in Washington this month. Now comes a report showing Congress is increasingly abusing emergency designations to evade spending limits. It turns out Congress has designated $12 trillion in spending for emergencies over the past 30 years. I'll discuss that and more this afternoon with ROMINA, Director of Budget and Entitlements Policy at the Cato Institute. I'll also discuss the business of show business, entrepreneurship, the Middle East crisis, and more with mega entrepreneur, billionaire, businessman, philanthropist, author, and founder, executive chairman of snack company Kind. He's also on the TV show Shark Tank. Want to guess who it is? Yep, Daniel LUBETSKY will be joining us later this hour. I caught up with him on the red carpet at the Golden Globes Awards at the Beverly Hilton over the weekend. But first, on your money, the markets and the economy. Joining us live now is money manager Ken Winans, president of Winans Investments, Forbes magazine contributor, market historian, and author of Investment Atlas 1 and 2. Ken, Happy New Year and good afternoon to you, sir.
Frank, good afternoon. And look, I got one and very, very important question for you about the Golden Globes. Did you wear one of those lame clip-on bow ties, or do you actually tie a bow tie in a real manner, sir?
I have to take the fifth on that one, but it looked like it was satisfactory. I hope you checked out my little Instagram postings on all this. So I'll let you be the judge on that one.
Listen, I stay away from fashion. I'm better in finance, and I avoid fashion, so it keeps me in the clean world. But Frank, it's going to be just as there's drama going on in the award ceremonies. There is going to be a lot of drama this year when it comes to money, finance, economics, and all the other things that are involved. And you just rattled off a whole bunch of things. Let's talk about why January is such a critical month for investors. And by the way, whether you're a bond investor, a stock investor, somebody who dabbles in Bitcoin, commodities, even real estate, I would say that this sets the tone for the year. So a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, we're just now entering earnings season. Now, a couple of things that are interesting about earnings season this year. A lot of companies have been moving back their dates on announcements. I'm not quite sure why. Whether it's tied to weather-related issues, believe it or not, that still plays a role with a lot of companies. But more than that, I think it's companies are really just trying to shore up what their guidance is when it comes to inflation. And the big thing I think we're going to hear a lot about this year is wage push inflation. The tone was set last year with the strikes in the entertainment industry, certainly the strikes with Humana, certainly the strikes with the automotive industry, UPS, you name it. That is going to carry going forward because there's a thing called a cost of living allowance called COLA. A lot of companies are having to invoke that, and it's going to start putting a dent into some bottom line of a lot of companies. So we have wage push inflation, which could affect the Fed's decision to do anything with interest rates at all, plus with what's going on with the elections. So what I would suggest is everybody wants to pay very close attention to what J.P. Morgan Chase says and United Healthcare says this Friday. Those are my two bellwether earnings announcements, and we have a lot to come.
On there live with money manager Ken Winans, and this is creating quite a buzz this afternoon. The breaking news that the official X account, formerly known as Twitter account for the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, was apparently compromised somehow, and they published an unauthorized post that the agency had already approved the launch of an exchange-traded fund investing directly in Bitcoin, and this is not the case. So have we ever seen anything like this, Ken? And what's your reaction to this breaking news today?
Well, hacks have been happening quite a while with various government agencies, so why should the SEC be, certainly immune from this kind of a thing happening? I believe the Federal Reserve had a hack in their system, I think it was 2 years ago, so it's not a surprise. Here's the thing, and maybe it's just me. I'm just looking at this. I'm in favor if people want an investment vehicle to buy into, fine. I believe that investors have the right to pick and choose. But here's the question that's not being asked as far as the Bitcoin situation, and you have to go back and look at the same drama that played out with commodity-based exchange-traded funds. For some strange reason, the government agencies will allow them to have what we call a long fund, meaning you can own it and write it up, but they will not allow an inverse ETF, which means that you can make money on the vehicle going down. Certainly with the drama that was played out with Bitcoin's volatility all throughout the last 24 months, I believe it warrants having, if you're going to approve one direction, you got to approve the other. And this is exactly what happened in commodities. They allowed them to say it's okay to buy corn, but we're not going to let you sell corn. The government is either going to be all in or all out, but you can't do these half measures. This really does goof up investors. So I hope that there's a step back, approval, but do it with some wisdom.
All right, I'm not sure if the Fed's computers got hacked, because if that was the case, whoever did it would have gotten away with negative $34 trillion.
Isn't that something when you think about it? Hey, it's just, and computer, companies are getting hacked all the time. Frank, I know you and I remember distinctly well. I think we have to be very careful when we think about, certainly now all the talk about artificial intelligence and it's entering the investment world. The problem is I distinctly remember the flash crashes that hit in the 2010s. And I remember, Procter & Gamble, which is one of the Dow components, lost 65 or 70% of its value for about 30 seconds. They did a massive investigation about who made money and where. there's a lot of talk about the people who make money on these nanosecond changes on the stock exchanges. So there is big money on hacking into the systems, but it's just something we have to learn to endure.
Yeah. I'm reading the statement now from the SEC. The SEC found that there was unauthorized access to and activity on the agency's X account by an unknown party, according to an agency spokesperson, adding that the, quote, unauthorized access has been terminated and that the SEC will work with law enforcement to investigate the matter. So we did see Bitcoin get a bump on this, but apparently it's pulled back here now to around, around 46,204 at last check. But certainly you're right, Ken. That's looks like we're going to see a big investigation related to all this and who made money or lost money. And it looks like the SEC will have to investigate itself.
Well, in the old days, I mean, for any of us who enjoy watching the old financial movies or the old movie Wall Street, they talked about insider trading, which was somebody making money on knowledge that's not known to everybody else. And what you just described is the modern day version of that, which is somebody pulled something off, probably made some money on it, and it's awfully hard to track down. It's just what it is. It's unfortunate, but it happens.
All right. Let's talk about Boeing and what's happened there with the CEO saying we're going to be transparent about what happened with that blowout they saw over the weekend. Ken, what about Boeing here, which took a hit yesterday and down again today?
You know, it's funny. It's by the grace of God that we actually had nobody harmed in what happened with their, there's been a distinct change in what happens when there is a malfunction with an aircraft on how the fact that a pilot can still maintain control and can land it. Boeing, obviously, the 737 MAX had massive problems several years back, basically tied to computer controls. This was a mechanical issue. It's just what happens to these type of companies, and I think that, thank goodness they know what the issue is, and they're going to get it resolved, and they'll be able to.
The NFL playoffs are here, and it all starts on January 13th with Super Wildcard Weekend.
Give me everything you got.
12 teams, 6 games, 3 days, and one epic weekend that kicks off with a Saturday doubleheader, followed by a Sunday tripleheader, and ends with a Wild Card Monday.
Unbelievable.
The road to Super Bowl 58 starts now. Super Wild Card Weekend presented by Verizon. Visit NFL.com/schedule for ways to watch.
What companies deserve your hard-earned dollar? Which would you want to work for? How can you know if they share your values? Just ask us. Just Capital is a nonprofit that tracks who really means business in supporting workers, customers, communities, the environment, and shareholders. We measure progress, track success, and help them be better. When you see the Just Capital seal, you know what's real, because just business is better business. Visit justcapital.com to learn who makes your dollar count.
The NFL playoffs are here, and it all starts on January 13th with Super Wildcard Weekend.
Give me everything you got.
12 teams, 6 games, 3 days, and one epic weekend that kicks off with a Saturday doubleheader, followed by a Sunday tripleheader, and ends with a Wild Card Monday.
Unbelievable.
The road to Super Bowl 58 starts now. Super Wild Card Weekend presented by Verizon. Visit NFL.com/schedule for ways to watch.
Business has always been about turning a profit, making money. But can it stand for something more? Something beyond dollars and cents? We think so. We think that today, business has a higher calling, a purpose to be fair and just, to do right by their workers, customers, communities, and the environment. And it turns out companies successful doing that also do better for their bottom line. When you see the Just Capital seal, it means this company is a force for good. Visit justcapital.com to learn more.
Fix it. But I actually think it's a credit in many, many ways that this could have been an awful tragedy, and that the fact that it's been caught, the company is fessed up, and they're fixing it quickly. I think that in many ways we should look at it as a positive, not a negative. Now, with that being said, as an investor, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on management to try to explain how it is that you let your cash cow get hit in this manner. Boeing had a reprieve, it was about 7-8 years ago when the other situation occurred. But I'm not sure investors will be quite as forgiving this round. But let's see what they do on their earnings as far as what they have to set back as reserves to fix these problems.
On there live with money manager Ken Winans. We missed you at the Golden Globes over the weekend, Ken, and certainly it looks like Hollywood is back in force following the the strikes last year, and everyone's eager to get back to work, and a lot of new energy here now. What about those media names that took such a tremendous hit as Hollywood was shut down last year?
Well, it's interesting that we talk about it because the two things that I think are going to be themes for the rest of this year is going to be consolidation amongst many of the studios. I mean, certainly look at what's going on with Paramount, Warner Brothers, and certainly other names looking at combination. But I also think the big thing is that huge SAG contract that came out on AI voiceover. So I think that there's going to be opportunities, but there's definitely repositioning for where we are going forward. And then last but not least, let's not forget that it's also become an international industry. It's not just the U.S. any longer. And I think it'll be interesting to see that, especially with the problems that we're having with China on a geopolitical front, how does that hurt Hollywood and certainly anything that we have with contracts going forward with the Chinese audience. So again, I think there's frankly, there's always opportunities. You know, I'm an optimist at heart, and I think that this will find a way of working itself out, and certainly we're past the strikes and we can move forward. But as you said, there's new energy, and I think that's a positive going into the rest of this year. Hopefully it's that transcends itself into a lot of new content and a lot of new wonderful movies and shows.
All right. And you mentioned it, AI still a big issue here as we head into 2024. And by the way, Hewlett-Packard making news today, agreeing to buy the communications networking provider Juniper Networks. That was an all-cash deal worth around $14 billion. Big deal here as we start the new year. Shares of Juniper up, about 22% and up in after-hours trading to Hewlett-Packard, moving lower during the trading day, down about 9% and down slightly after hours. The Wall Street Journal reported the possibility of a deal, and Juniper has an AI segment called Mist AI. So what are we to make of this deal, and what's your view on AI here in the new year?
You know, I think it's going to be interesting to see how AI plays out. I think it's going to be industry, and even with industries, sector by sector. Computerization has been changing the world for a very long time, and a lot of this is coming back to, we keep talking about the ghost of COVID. A lot of this was tied to the COVID pandemic because they were worried about, we're going to have enough workers, people willing to show up for work, people who can work at home and still have virtuality. So I think that, again, these technologies can be very important. I know that in Northern California, a lot of the companies are seeing it as their next boost going forward. We'll have to see where it plays out. Now, the big show going on in Las Vegas, my friends, and I'm not there this week, but many of my friends that are there, everybody's talking about AI-related gadgets. So I think that it's certainly a theme that everybody's putting their money behind, and we'll have to see how it plays out. But, Frank, one caveat. Whenever you have these things enter the workforce, it takes time to vet them and to have it become a normal part of your routine. Just because it's there doesn't mean it's going to be immediately embraced. It takes years and years to refine it. So although it's exciting, let's not assume it's going to be suddenly changing everything overnight. It will change over time. There will be progress. But as I said, things take time to work its way through the system.
On the air live with money manager Ken WINANS, and that slow return to the office continues, Ken, with commercial real estate still very much in focus here as we start the new year. You travel, of course, around the country and see what's going on in the various downtowns, but what about commercial real estate? Downtown L.A. still looking pretty thin compared to what it was, and you're seeing what you see in the other major cities. What about real estate here in the new year?
One word, geographic. It really depends on the city. It depends on government regulations and mandates and all these other things. And it is very much state to state, county to county when you really go through there. I mean, clearly when you go to places like Salt Lake City or Phoenix or Las Vegas, you can see very quickly that workforce routines have largely came back in a lot of ways. And it's also the kind of industries that are there, too. I think we also want to be very careful on that. But there is a push back to work, and whether it's the public sector or private sector, people need to, start showing back up with their work. I mean, I'm hearing people that, and actually are really, I would say, feeling the pinch because they thought that the workplace changes would be permanent. They went out into these rural areas, bought houses, established a lifestyle, moved their families, and now they're being told by their companies, hey, we want you to come back at least every 10 days. And one of the problems they're having is, guess what? They might not have an airport that they can fly in and out of comfortably. So there's going to be a lot of readjustments, I think, in the workplace going forward for the next 3 to 5 years. And of course, I think the election could have a change on that too, because depending on whichever administration takes over going into next year, I could see there could be a big push toward pro-business, siding on pro-business to tell their employees, hey, we want you back in the workplace. So it will be interesting to see how it plays out. But Frank, it is, again, commercial real estate. It's an area that I'm staying clear of right now. Even on the REIT side, it's just too hard to call. And again, a lot of the dividends are beginning to drop in a lot of the commercial REITs, and it's just the way it plays out.
I wish we had more time here, Ken, but thanks very much for coming to the line this afternoon with a lot of ground to cover as always. That is money manager Ken Winans, president of Winans Investments, Forbes magazine contributor, market historian, and author of the books Investment Atlas 1 and 2. Ken, have a great afternoon. Happy New Year to you and everybody there, and look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Sounds great, Frank. You too now. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Friends, it's time to start the new year off right with reminders from attorney Clark Fielding of Fielding Law. Now, if you've been hurt in an accident that was not your fault, it's easy to feel lost in the sea of legal complexities out there. Well, fear not. Clark and his team of law sharks are here to navigate the legal waters for you. They have the expertise to tackle any case, big or small. Fielding Law is not just about providing legal advice. They're also about making sure you understand every step of the process. So consider them your partners in justice. Whether you're facing a sea of paperwork, swimming in contractual confusion, or caught in a legal undertow, Clark the Shark is the lifeguard you need. The Fielding Law team dedicated to protecting your rights and ensuring a smooth journey through the legal currents. So if you dive into the new year, remember, Fielding Law always has your back. They're not just lawyers, they're your fantastic friends in the legal world. Call them now, 833-88-SHARK. Again, that's 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Again, clarkthesharklaw.com. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Mixed finish to the day on Wall Street. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 158 points, settling at 37,525. The S&P 500 down 7 at 4,756. And the Nasdaq managed a closing gain of 14 points at 14,858. The price of gold up about $4 now at $2,036 and change. Drama involving the Securities and Exchange Commission and the crypto market. Crypto market participants have been widely expecting the Securities and Exchange Commission to approve a spot Bitcoin ETF soon. But apparently there was a big hiccup today. The Securities and Exchange Commission's official account on X, formerly known as Twitter, was compromised, they say, and it published an unauthorized post that the agency had approved the launch of an ETF investing directly in Bitcoin. That was not the case. The agency has not approved any spot Bitcoin ETFs. Per the earlier post, now deleted, according to the SEC, it was sent by an unauthorized user. This directly from the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Chairman Gary Gensler. We're waiting some further information about exactly what happened here, but it was a very unusual situation. And looks like Bitcoin got a bump on this news, up about 2%, but has since pulled back. Right now at around 46,200. Ethereum of 22 at 2,342. And Doge now at 8 cents. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Good afternoon. We're on at our new time in the 4 o'clock hour here. Don't want to keep our listeners in the dark. So while the sun is shining, we'll be joining you every afternoon at 4 o'clock. Mottek On Money. Live for you right here in 790 KBC. Streaming live online at kbc.com. And, of course, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast for you on all your favorite podcast platforms. Well, it turns out the nation's debt of $34 trillion is a $34 trillion debt mountain that might be a boiling frog situation for the economy, as higher deficits and ballooning debt servicing costs could easily become unsustainable. This, according to a warning this week from analysts at J.P. Morgan Chase. A boiling frog situation is one in which people fail to act on a potential problem that grows over time, causing it to become more severe until it eventually bubbles over. So we're watching another eye-popping reading recently on the national debt, now at $34.01 trillion. Another federal budget drama playing out in Washington this month. Now comes a new report showing Congress is increasingly abusing emergency designations to avoid spending limits. It turns out Congress has designated $12 trillion in spending for emergencies over the past 30 years. Let's bring in ROMINA BOCCIA now, Director of Budget and Entitlements Policy at the Cato Institute. ROMINA, thank you very much. Happy New Year to you and everybody there.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Happy to be on here. And I wanted to say that I think you did a really good job laying out the situation we're facing here. And it's that $12 trillion you mentioned in just pure emergency spending, that is about 43% of that total national debt that you mentioned earlier. And our debt now is about $100,000 for every person in the United States. That's every grandparent, father, mother, and child. And that I think that boiling frog metaphor is very apt if we look at the budget deal that is being advanced in both the House and the Senate right now that Speaker Johnson worked up with Senator Schumer, because in Washington it's business as usual. Spending will go up yet again, and so far there's no relief in sight to take the pressure off these growing deficits that continue to add to our national debt.
And that national debt number was eye-popping when they updated it recently, hitting $34 trillion plus this month. The result of lawmakers lifting the U.S. debt ceiling last year to avoid a default. And looks like the same thing will be happening again pretty soon here.
So they actually pushed the debt limit to pass the election. So lawmakers will not have to vote again on a debt limit increase until after the election in 2025. And that was intentional because they really don't want to talk about the debt. Because when they talk about the debt, if they're being honest with voters, they have to talk about what their plan is for Medicare and Social Security, which are the biggest drivers of our growing debt, in addition to interest on the debt, which of course is just a symptom of the growing debt and the higher interest rates that we're suffering through as a result of the inflation that, again, was also a result of government spending and printing additional money, especially during the pandemic, that we're still trying to dig out of now. And so what they're talking about now is how to fund the government for the remainder of this year for people who...
The NFL playoffs are here, and it all starts on January 13th with Super Wildcard Weekend.
Give me everything you got.
12 teams, 6 games, 3 days, and one epic weekend that kicks off with a Saturday doubleheader, followed by a Sunday tripleheader, and ends with a Wild Card Monday.
Unbelievable.
The road to Super Bowl 58 starts now. Super Wild Card Weekend presented by Verizon. Visit NFL.com/schedule for ways to watch.
What companies deserve your hard-earned dollar? Which would you want to work for? How can you know if they share your values? Just ask us. Just Capital is a nonprofit that tracks who really means business in supporting workers, customers, communities, the environment, and shareholders. We measure progress, track success, and help them be better. When you see the Just Capital seal, you know what's real, because just business is better business. Visit justcapital.com to learn who makes your dollar count.
You might not know the federal budget runs on a fiscal year cycle, which starts on October 1st and goes to September 31st. And so we're already 4 months into this fiscal year, and they just struck a deal for top-line spending levels. That means they decided what is the maximum amount we're going to spend on defense and non-defense programs for the remainder of this year. But so far, they have not addressed the growing national debt. And the government, as big as our debt is now at $34 trillion, it pales in comparison to what the government will need to borrow just over the next 30 years. We're talking about $120 trillion. It's crazy. It's about 3 times our current national debt, which, if you think about it, the United States accumulated about $34 trillion in debt in its 270-year history, and we're looking at adding 3 times that in just the next 30 years. It's obvious to anyone. You don't have to be a budget expert or financial whiz that our federal budget situation is highly unsustainable, and the sooner lawmakers grapple with it, the better off all of us will be.
All right, so congressional leaders did announce a spending deal that would avert the next government shutdown, but obviously this debt situation is getting more attention thanks to your important work there and these designations of emergencies. Are we going to see this play out again here, given all the urgent geopolitical situations around the world at the moment?
Yeah, so they did not address the Biden emergency spending request to provide more financial aid to Ukraine or Israel or Taiwan, all of which the president has requested more money for. And we're talking a lot of money, over $100 billion for these efforts that is still outstanding. So we have to see what Congress ends up doing. So far, there hasn't been much appetite among at least the Republicans in the House to give in on those requests, especially if there isn't going to be agreement on additional border security measures, which the Republicans have made their big ask in this. But I don't think that the regular dealing that we see in Congress, where the Republicans go, we need more money and different policies on the border, and then you'll get more money for these other geopolitical threats, is a policy that we can continue, because that's a policy of forging compromise by saying you get to spend more and we get to spend more. That only works when you have a sustainable fiscal situation. But given the high interest rates that taxpayers are now confronting on the federal debt and the massive growth trajectory without any additional spending, just looking at spending that's already baked into the pie, and that's, the Medicare and Social Security with the continued aging of American society and the retirement of the baby boomers, those issues have not been addressed, and we've seen them coming for decades. And now the chickens are coming home to roost, and we do need to address this in this decade. I don't envy the next president, because surely they'll have quite the unpopular but very economically necessary docket to deal with.
Looks like the debt becoming front page news nowadays, and we'll be following this very, very closely. I see, for example, in the Financial Times today, there was a big headline: "Deluge of debt feeds fear of backlash in the bond markets." This is a term that I've not heard used often. It says investors are warning governments around the world over unmoored levels of public debt, saying pledges of excessive pre-election borrowing risk sparking a bond market backlash. That's in today's Financial Times. They're calling them unmoored deficit, basically unfunded obligations here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and these are really important messages that our investors are sending to Washington. And you can go very quickly from not being in a debt crisis to being in one. If we think back to what happened in Greece, everything seemed to be going just fine. The Greeks were borrowing and spending. Their economy was humming along. And then it seemed like from one day to the next, whoops, they had a debt crisis on their hands. And this is unfortunately how these crises tend to play out. We know that we have an unsustainable fiscal situation. And if Congress refuses to address it, there might come a day where investors decide that they have lost faith in the government's willingness and ability to service that debt at full value without inflating it away, because that's the real risk. The United States is a country, unlike Greece, that prints its own currency. So when investors show up and say, we are no longer willing to buy your debt at low interest rates, we demand higher interest rates, and the government doesn't want to pay that, they have the option in the United States here to just run the printing presses at the Federal Reserve. And we saw them issue about $5 trillion in additional money during the pandemic to help fund all this additional emergency spending. And that led to an inflation high that we hadn't seen in 40 years. And if the government decides to monetize the debt and just print the money to continue the funding, when investors demand higher interest rates, then we could potentially see double-digit inflation. And of course, the biggest risk are to those Americans who can least fetter those that high inflation. Americans who are working Americans, middle-class Americans who are trying to make ends meet month to month, and so. We should be heeding those investors' warnings, and we should be getting our fiscal house in order sooner rather than later. I am encouraged that the House Speaker is very interested in a fiscal commission to help Congress see this through with the help of outside experts to really tackle our entitlement spending challenge that will lead to an eventual debt crisis if we don't get a hold of it.
Romina, I wish we had more time, but we'll have to stop there. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us on this very, very important issue, and look forward to many more conversations in the new year. That is Romina BOCCIA, Director of Budget and Entitlements Policy at the Cato Institute, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Good afternoon. This is Mottek On Money at our new time in the 4 o'clock hour here on 790 KBC. And this is Mottek On Money Special Edition, the business of show business, coming to you straight from the red carpet at the 81st Annual Golden Globe Awards in Beverly Hills. The star-studded event at the Beverly Hilton kicks off the Hollywood Awards season and pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into the local economy. The Moet champagne is flowing. The stars and movers and shakers in the entertainment industry are here, ready for their close-ups right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Joining us live now, Daniel Lubetsky, the CEO of Kind, and of course one of the most popular sharks on Shark Tank. Wonderful to see you here at the Golden Globes this evening.
Thank you so much, Frank. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very, very much, and give us your reaction to being here at the kickoff to the Hollywood Awards season here in Beverly Hills.
It's a lot of fun. I'm very energized. I'm very excited for a lot of my friends, and I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful to see you again, and tell us about your business and how things are looking from your vantage point.
Well, I'm the founder of Kind, but I also work very hard for building bridges between people across the world, including in the Middle East. So these are difficult moments, but we're very energized because creating a movement of builders that are going to transcend all the differences and all the hate. And we have millions of members, and we hope people are going to join us, and they can learn about it on the web. It starts with us, and many other platforms.
That's wonderful, and I remember meeting you at one of the events where you supported the new museum in Israel, and I know you're a strong supporter of Israel.
I'm a big supporter of Israel, and I'm a big supporter of building bridges between Israel and its neighbors to try to end this conflict and to try to make sure that we transcend the differences and don't play into the hate from the extremists that want to deny the humanity of anybody. And the overwhelming majority of people are moderates, but they need to become builders. They need to take action to try to build together.
Is everyone in Israel okay that you know there, sir?
We have a lot of losses. The chairman of our movement, his son was killed. He was an Israeli Jew. My Palestinian co-founder of the One Voice movement, his cousin was killed. A lot of Israeli and Palestinian citizens of Israel were killed by Hamas. And we have staff across the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel that are trying to build an infrastructure of builders against destroyers, and it's going to take everybody working to not allow voices of extremism to hijack the process.
That's heartbreaking. How can people support your efforts this way?
They should go on startswith.us and sign up and learn how to get more involved.
And tell us about Shark Tank now and another season coming up here.
Shark Tank season 15 is in full swing, and it's really, really fun, and I have another episode coming in a couple of weeks.
Congratulations. You going to give Mr. Wonderful a hard time?
I always try to. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Everybody tries to give each other a hard time, but when it ends, they all hug. And it's the type of culture we need to build in our world, where we can have hearty debate, but ultimately we find a way to respectfully disagree and get along.
Wonderful. Well, this is a big deal tonight, and it's wonderful to see you here. Mr. Lubetsky, thank you very much for joining us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Thank you, Frank.
Fantastic. Well, the red carpet economy roaring back following the Golden Globes over the weekend. Taylor Swift, who has basically her own economy, walked the red carpet there at the Beverly Hilton Hotel and actually shut down the red carpet for a while. So anytime she shows up, all eyes are on Taylor Swift, who gets the credit, by the way, for pumping up this economy to the tune of more than $300 million just in her Eras concert tour alone, that 6-day run we had here. And also the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia recently announced that Taylor Swift's tour helped boost travel and tourism. And it looks like she might have added about $5 billion to the global economy. She herself became a billionaire over the past year. Congratulations to all the winners of the Golden Globes. And it was great to see Daniel Lubetsky and other business leaders walking the red carpet as well over the weekend. This is Mottek On Money. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with our legal eagle Royal Oaks coming your way next here on 790 KBC.
The NFL playoffs are here, and it all starts on January 13th with Super Wildcard Weekend.
Give me everything you got.
12 teams, 6 games, 3 days, and one epic weekend that kicks off with a Saturday doubleheader. followed by a Sunday tripleheader, and ends with a Wild Card Monday.
Unbelievable.
The road to Super Bowl 58 starts now. Super Wild Card Weekend presented by Verizon. Visit NFL.com/schedule for ways to watch.